What is up, Ravens Flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in everyone to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell, and this is another installment of our camp position battles. This time moving on to the offensive side of the ball, some pass catchers, and we're excited to get into it. But before we do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, click the notification bell. We can keep you up to date on all your Ravens news. But Jimbo, what position will be focusing on in this video?
Yeah, you guys got to be careful with Glenn. He chooses his words wisely. I like how he said pass catchers.
That's right.
Because at the end of the day, that's what these guys are in today's NFL. Not that they don't block, but everyone blocks. Blocking is a team game. So we're talking about the tight end.
Mm-hmm.
In regards to the tight end, the Baltimore Ravens, I think that this is a position group that people are kind of sleeping on as far as the intrigue in camp, because you have Mark Andrews, you have the vet and Nick Boyle, but there's some. It will be interesting to see how this position group eventually affects other position groups, because I think if you look at the main four, obviously you got Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, and then you got Kohler. And you got Likely, the two rookies. Those four have to be locks, right? Like, I don't see the Ravens moving off of Kohler or Likely unless they absolutely wet the bed in training camp, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, 100%. Mark Andrews certainly isn't going anywhere. And Nick Boyle, I think a month or two ago we predicted that it was a possibility that Nick Boyle could be a cap casualty.
Right.
Especially after the draft, but Nick Boyle restructured, making it, very unlikely that they're going to move on with him after a restructured deal. I don't think.
Yeah, right. Because what happened to that restructure is it gave him some security for this year, that like they committed to him, more this year in guaranteed dollars.
Yeah.
And it lowered the cap hit a bit. So
yeah, 4 locks, Jimbo, in my opinion, unless there, of course, there's always the opportunity for an injury.
Sure.
But if all things remain how they are right now, then you're right. I think it's Mark Andrews, Nick Boyle, Charlie Kohler, and Isaiah Likely as the locks.
Yeah.
But Jimbo, we're talking about a battle here. So how can there be a battle when we have 4 locks, and then we still have Josh Oliver, who is going in his second season as a Raven, and Tony Poljan finds himself in the same camp, although he was a rookie last year. What's it mean for Oliver and Poljan?
Yeah, I think it means that they're on the wrong side of this 53-man roster at the end of the day, and either looking for another job on the practice squad or whatever the case may be. But Poljan was making some noise last year in preseason. Oliver, the thing about Oliver, to me, he was given a lot of opportunities because of, I think, his athleticism. But man, he didn't seem to capitalize too much on any of those opportunities. I'm not knocking him. Maybe if you take a look at the tape, they weren't as good as they seemed, but certainly he got balls sent his way. And it reminded me, what it reminded me a little bit of? Ingram, the Giants tight end, where he would have like 10 receptions for 4 yards. You know what I'm saying? So I felt like Oliver had a lot of like short yardage stuff that they were expecting him to kind of beat the guy in front of him or, shake the guy off of him. And he just kind of didn't do that too much to me.
No, you're right. Yeah, he didn't. He disappointed, and he had the big fumble, if you remember.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
John don't like that when you're in the red zone and you're coughing the ball up. So, he only had 9 catches all last year, for 66 yards in total. So,
but I guess the other thing, let me clarify. I felt like in the preseason he got a decent amount of.
Oh, he definitely did.
You know what I mean?
They were trying to see what they got because the Nick Boyle stuff and. There was question marks after Hurst being out of here. There were certainly questions at the position. He had his opportunities, and I think at this point, Josh Oliver is just an okay player. And like you said, maybe a practice squad or a, hey, stick around. We might be calling you if we need you type thing. But and Tony Poljan to me is more of a insurance policy for Nick Boyle because he is gigantic. He's 6'7". He's 250 some pounds. but I don't know how much he's bringing to the pass catching part of things.
Yeah, my real question to you though, Glenn, is this. I mean, if you had to guess, we haven't done the research offhand. How many teams do you think are rolling into a game on Sunday with 4 tight ends? Think there's a decent amount? I think that's pretty heavy, right?
I think that's pretty heavy, absolutely, and especially when you consider that you add in the fact that they have a tight end in the team. That most teams don't have a traditional tight end like the
You mean
Ravens do.
fullback.
Oh, I'm sorry, fullback. So if
Yeah.
you have Pat Ricard plus 4 tight ends, I mean that's a lot to commit to those 2 position groups.
Yeah, so that to me is the interesting part about this, right? Because I think we've both determined that those guys are locks, and I think we've both also come to an agreement that Josh Oliver is very much looking to be out of the equation. Same thing with Poljan as far as the 53-man roster, but what it really comes down to, Glenn, is how will they use these guys, right? Like, what will the usage of likely be in comparison to Kohler and percentage wise and stuff like that? How do you see this breaking down this year?
Well, I tell you, I think the young guys are going to get a ton of run. Obviously, Mark Andrews, who I think will continue to be the lead dog when it comes to targets from Lamar Jackson. I think that nothing changes in that regard. He'll continue to get a ton of looks. Nick Boyle will go back to his role as being a monster blocking tight end who's basically like an additional tackle out there with the sprinkling of pass catches throughout the season. Nothing crazy, but he will get a few in the flat. And maybe pick up a couple first downs throughout the year. But Charlie Kohler and Isaiah Likely, that's the exciting part. I think, to me, now this is awfully early on, but what I look at it is Charlie Kohler as being a possession red zone threat that is desperately needed to go opposite Mark Andrews because he gets so much attention from the opposing defense. So I like Kohler as use your body, use your frame to go get the ball, be a red zone threat, and find the soft spot in the zone. But I look at Isaiah Likely as more of a stretch the field from the tight end position, kind of like we saw from is it Njoku from the Browns? He was their deep threat, for a good portion of the season last year, and I think Isaiah Likely is going to bring a lot of that up the seam and stretch the field between the 20s. I think he'll obviously be effective in the red zone as well, but as far as how their roles will differ, I see Isaiah Likely being much more of a stretch the field and yak guy than Charlie Kohler, who I think is more of a possession and red zone threat.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see. It's funny that you're interested about Kohler, and I'm interested about him as well, but I really want to see if they can get creative with Likely, because what I predict will happen is I think if we go light anywhere, I mean, we're going to have to go light other places. I think where we end up going light is the wide receiver room. And, this group directly impacts that group. And so seeing Likely kind of be in this hybrid role is, I think, what will end up happening. And utilizing his athleticism, like you talked about him going up the seam, but even, we might see him on the outside a bit, which will be exciting as well. We've talked about for years, we're looking for a possession guy. We're looking for a big body receiver who can high point the ball. Ladies and gentlemen, if I had a nickel for every time I heard Glenn, I'm talking pre-show. I'm talking like kids, like pre-adult life. We need a receiver that can high point the ball, except those few years we had Anquan Bolden. I would be over my head in nickels. And it's so true, right? But hey, we talked about this before, but Eric DeCosta could have, run into a loophole here and said, look, I'll take this kid late because he can do a lot of what we're missing within the equation of pass catchers, right? Yep. So I'm excited to see how this kid is deployed in preseason. This is my concern. I don't have a ton. Are you at all concerned that Greg does not have the creativity to utilize a kid like, Likely, his athleticism?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I mean,
all right.
First of all, he's a tight end first. I think you're right. He's going to do a ton of wide receiver things, but
right.
I don't think you can find a more creative, user of the tight end position.
I guess that's true. I guess my concern where it was coming from was the ability to get creative in the pass game, but you're right, especially when it comes to tight ends. Greg knows how to make tight ends money.
Yeah, what he's going to do is he's just going to cause such a mismatch issue because he's going to go back to that 2019 formula where he floods the field with big guys, forces you to do the same or get ran over, And when you decide to cover a guy like Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews with a big guy, he makes him look like a big, slow guy. Those, and they make him look bad. And I think that's where Isaiah is going to come into play is get him the ball in any kind of space, because chances are it's going to be a bigger, slower guy chasing him. And then he makes one guy miss, and then who knows what happens after that. So, yeah, I think that Greg is licking his chops at what he can do, because it's just so counterintuitive. It's so opposite of what every other team is going to do. You're going to have a few days to get ready for a Ravens team that does everything opposite what most teams do, which is, spread you out, go small, whip the ball around. It's just not a lot of time to prepare, during the week leading up, but also you're not preparing all offseason for a team like this when this is really the only team that does it this way.
Right. Man, it is going to be really interesting to see how all of this comes together, certainly in the tight end room. So, ladies and gentlemen, don't sleep on the tight end room. I think it's pretty solidified as far as who's going to be on the roster and who's not. But the exciting thing about camp is going to be how these guys are deployed, the percentage of their usage, the deception, right? The ability to be deceptive with these four, right? The mismatches like Glenn mentioned. Let us know your thoughts, guys. Are you as excited about Kohler and Likely as we are? Is there any chance Oliver finds his way on this roster, or even Poljan? Give us all your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
See you.